my dad is actually not unwealthy.
Quote, my dad is actually not unwealthy.
If push came to shove, I am not going to starve. My dad's going to back me up. If push came to shove, your dad bought you an Infiniti, okay? Let alone, and that's not even coming close to shove, right? And that doesn't make you a bad person. That certainly doesn't make me a bad person, okay? But the fact is, we have backup. And a lot of people in this country don't have backup.
Well, I mean, I just realized Ben's uncle is an Academy Award nominee. His brother is a...
Winner. He won
I'm sorry. His brother is a newscaster on 48 Hours.
Dateline.
Right?
You're 0 for
Dateline.
2. You're getting there, though. Yeah.
0 for 3
Come on,
so far.
close enough for rock and roll.
You are. That's right.
Dateline. Jill's parents are Brentwood wealthy people.
He ran Paramount Studios.
Yes. Okay, and Chang, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what your deal is.
My dad's an olive farm.
All right, but here's the point. You guys are the elite.
That's awesome.
Oh, come on. If you're not the elite, then the rest...
Isn't that interesting? This is 2006. 2006, when the Young Turks were just getting started. They may not have known it, but they were at the start of this long, long period, frankly, of dominance of left-wing media. And it was already being pointed out by their audience that really, they're all quite wealthy people. And that includes things that still come up on the show. They mention taking vacations in exotic places like Hawaii. They mention things about their lifestyle in Los Angeles. Already in 2006, the question was beginning to be asked about their individual extraordinary wealth. But now in 2020, the question I'm asking is about their institutional wealth. Like, if they could ask for donations back in 2006, when they boasted they had a budget of only $35,000 or $45,000 a month total operating cost, after you've crossed that point where you have a headline in a mainstream newspaper announcing $20 million of capital investment, right? Venture capital. At what point do you stop asking for donations? At what point do you stop crying poor and recognize, I mean, certainly amongst the left-wing media, I mean, very few journalists get paid today. This is a particular line of work, whether publishing, broadcasting, or YouTube. A lot of people are doing this for no money at all or merely symbolic payment. If you want to know how much I make. And in fact, these people don't represent the common man. They don't represent the plight of the poor or the oppressed in some really strange sense from day one, from the start.
If you're not the elite, then the rest of us are pieces of garbage.
Well, that's
because I mean, you're the elite. And it's really sad that the liberal voice of our cause are really the cream of the crop, the richest, the wealthiest, the most prestigious, the ones who have most of the awards, the ones who have...
So this also gets into a really interesting question for people on the left. Why is it that you feel wealth would disqualify someone to play this role? But I mean, Cenk, even if you think about his background going through law school and then having the option to not become a lawyer, you know, that's a great privilege. To go through law school, for most people, would be an enormous amount of debt, after which they then couldn't take any risks. You know, like it's not that poor people can't afford to go to law school at all. That's a tremendous risk, tremendous debt in the United States of America. And then but Cenk went to law school and then never practiced law. He decided to be a radio talk show host instead, so on and so forth. Already at that stage, you get a hint of how wealthy his family is. And he owns up to it here. He says that his family is actually wealthier than the other two people whose families have just been mentioned. Does it disqualify you to be a voice for the left if your family is fabulously wealthy? Or, you know, is there a more nuanced conclusion to draw here? I remember the person who was most bent out of shape about my supposed wealth. How many videos have I recorded in this shirt, guys? This same shirt, I think, has more than 100 YouTube videos on it at this point. But my presumed wealth, the person who was most upset about it was actually Joe Vegan. So for you guys who can remember, there was a YouTube channel called Joe Vegan. I remember him sending me emails saying, you know, I Googled how much the tuition costs at that Chinese school you went to in Kunming, China. And I said, Joe, and he was really bent out of shape and demented about it. And he had his own mental problems, and he had a kind of stereotypical white British working class mentality that all the rich people are against him or something. And he really felt this disqualified me to do what I'm doing on YouTube. Like, I'm too wealthy to hold a microphone or something. And I remember saying, I said, yeah, look, I'm not upset about this. I'm happy to discuss this with you. But you're British. You think the place I studied Chinese is tremendously expensive. Do you know how much University of Oregon costs? Do you know how much University of Hawaii costs? Like, even if you go down to like small local colleges in the United States, like, do you know how much tuition is in countries like the United States? It's actually a really cheap option to fly to China and take Chinese lessons there instead of doing it at University of Oregon or, you name it, even a third string Mohawk State College or something. Hate to tell you this, but the numbers you saw on the internet, that's not expensive. That's cheap, But he was completely emotionally capable of dealing with it. He was just freaked out by this notion that I was part of a conspiracy of millionaires. If you want to see just how much or how little money is in my future, stay tuned to this channel. But yeah, it's interesting when you meet people for whom that's a really visceral reaction. And I don't think they can put it into words. I don't think they can think it through clearly themselves in their own mind. What it is they think, what it is they feel, what it is they believe about the relationship between rich and poor. And like how it is you've betrayed them because from their perspective, you've concealed how wealthy you are. Right? This comes up in this call, the idea that you're pretending to be a normal person, but you're not really one of us. You're part of this elite class. You're part of this economically privileged class.
Of all the benefits.
No, you're right. You're right.
Kevin, when are you going to lead the overthrow?
Yeah, we're done.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, do you not even question yourselves a little and say, my God, we have everything going for us.
Kevin.
We have everything going for us, and here we are, talking about the downtrodden and how hard.
I think they are shaken up by it. Sorry, just looking at the expressions of their faces. So I think they were not expecting to deal with this question. There was an old song from Bob Dylan, the rich and the strong and the weak and the poor. You gather them together and there ain't room for no more. Los Angeles, California, the divisions between rich and poor are very deep and very wide. I mean, the rich and the poor, I think, do live in two solitudes there. And in the media world, I think what he's talking about, just in terms of connections, when you look at the career of Sam Harris, it has everything to do with who his parents were. Just him getting his publishing deal in the first place, him getting into the media in the way he did. No doubt the career of Sam Harris had a lot more to do with the connections his parents had in Hollywood as wealthy, successful, basically stars in Hollywood, much more than it had to do with him getting a PhD or even how much money he had in the bank. But yeah, it's made a huge difference to Sam Harris's career as a, quote, intellectual, unquote, that he was fabulously wealthy and well-connected. And nobody thinks it's because Sam Harris had nuanced or well-informed opinions about politics. Nobody thinks it's because he was a scholar of religion or history or anything else.
All right,
you know what it
Kevin.
is? It's our way to give back to you common folk.
Yeah, thanks.
It's like I
we
think
really
of myself,
appreciate it.
I'm up on this pedestal, and I want to be able to help you. And the best way that I can help you is to talk about how hard life must be for you.
I don't know. I haven't been to Hawaii. My mom was born there, but I haven't been there. How was Hawaii for you?
It was
pretty
wonderful.
nice, I suppose.
And I'm so sorry that you're
I
at
just
the
wonder.
level.
I'm sorry, I do actually think the caller has a point. And again, if you've watched The Young Turks, if you've just listened to a few episodes at random, it is interesting how much scorn they heap on conservatives. Just even like the talk show hosts on CNN or something, not even like right-wing or extremists, but how much scorn they heap on their political enemies for living in luxury, for being wealthy. And then there were these mentions in passing of just how wealthy they are themselves.
I wonder about that. If you have a question about how you guys really are...
Hold on, Kevin. Ben, I'm sorry, Ben was about to ask a question, but I've been dying to ask this for the whole time that you've been talking. Okay, let's assume we are all privileged and we've all gotten 18 awards before we even got here, and
I actually got 20.
And and actually, when I was born in Istanbul, the hospital had to surgically.
I excluded you.
Or I had to surgically remove a silver spoon out of my ass.
I excluded you.
No, my dad is actually not unwealthy.
Quote, my dad is actually not unwealthy.
Include you.
See, Jack's family far richer than my family.
Okay, so
You're beginning to sound actually far richer than mine.
Well, I think that's wonderful for all of you.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Kevin.
I am
What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to say, oh, we've made it, everybody up above the law now?
I don't know. I think you should acknowledge your position. I think you should acknowledge where you are and where you're talking from.
So here we are 14 years later, and they're trying to raise $200,000 a month in donations, above and beyond what they make from YouTube, above and beyond what they make from Patreon, above and beyond what they make from subscriptions, from t-shirt sales, from hats and mugs. After multiple $2 million target rounds of crowdfunding, charitable donations, so on and so forth. I think the other question is, at what point does the e-begging stop?
Dun, 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 dun.